There comes a moment in your journey. Chosen one. When a door shuts so suddenly and so firmly, it echoes through your soul. You stand there staring at what used to be an open path, a familiar rhythm, a chapter you thought would continue. And now, it's gone. Without warning, without explanation. And in that silence, you're left wondering. Why? You thought it was alignment. You thought it was favor. You thought it was part of your divine path. But then, like a wave that retreats just before a tidal surge, it was snatched away. The job opportunity vanished. The relationship crumbled. The friendship dissolved. The relocation was blocked. The platform, the voice, the moment taken. And you were left with the sound of a closing door echoing in your spirit. But listen closely now, that door didn't shut to punish you. It shut to protect you. That was not rejection. It was divine redirection. It was your Creator, the Alpha and the Omega, stepping in like a father who sees danger before you ever do, and saying, "No, not here, not this way. I have something greater." You see, when you're truly chosen, when the divine has marked you as one who will shift not only your life, but the direction of an entire bloodline, your life doesn't move like others. Ordinary timing does not apply to extraordinary assignments. And sometimes, the only way to get you to release what's familiar is to close the door yourself won't. This isn't about that person who walked away. It's not about the opportunity that slipped through your fingers. It's not about the door. It's about what's on the other side of your obedience. It's about what's coming next. Because when you're called chosen one, you're not just carrying your own dreams. You're carrying the restoration of generations. You are the one who breaks the curse, who rewrites the legacy, who refuses to pass down the same wounds your ancestors carried. And for that, your path has to be different. It has to be sacred, and it has to be protected. Imagine for a moment what would have happened had that door stayed open. Had you forced your way through, convinced that you knew best, you would have walked straight into a counterfeit version of your destiny, shiny on the outside, but hollow on the inside. It would have drained you, derailed you, delayed you, and worse, it would have taught the generations after you to settle. But God is too intentional for that. He loves you too deeply for that. That closed door wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something more profound than you can currently comprehend. There's something powerful that happens when you start seeing denial not as destruction, but as direction. Suddenly, you're not fighting the flow, you're following it. You're not begging for clarity, you're trusting the character of the one who sees the full map while you only hold a single puzzle piece. And yes, it hurts. Oh, chosen one. I know it hurts. The silence, the waiting, the unanswered prayers, the feeling that maybe you did something wrong, that maybe you weren't enough, that maybe you misheard God's voice. But let me assure you right now, in this very moment, that door closed not because you failed, but because you were faithful, because you've grown, because you've evolved. And where you're going, you simply can't take that old key. You've been walking with a key that once opened doors in your previous season. But now the locks have changed. Your spirit has elevated. Your discernment has matured. Your frequency has risen. And now, new doors require new access points, divine ones. Sometimes, to protect the purity of your calling. God has to let something break that you were trying so hard to keep together. He'll let the plan you crafted fall apart so the blueprint he wrote can finally unfold. Because it's not just about you. It's about your children, your children's children, and the lineage that will trace its strength back to you. You are the pivot point, the inflection in your bloodline story, the one heaven chose to say, it ends with you, and it begins with you. So that breakup, that rejection letter, that betrayal that blindsided you, it wasn't personal, it was purposeful. It had to happen. Because if it didn't close now, you might have stayed. You might have settled. You might have stayed small in a space where your soul was meant to expand. You are not a victim of divine confusion. You are a vessel of divine coordination. God is not figuring this out as he goes. He's orchestrating a future you're not yet ready to walk into, but you will be. And every closed door is a whisper of preparation, not punishment. Can you feel it now, the shift happening in the atmosphere, that soft pull in your spirit that says, this isn't the end of my story. It's just a pause before the plot twist. That's confirmation. That's divine reassurance wrapping around your shoulders like a cloak. That's your spirit remembering what your mind can't yet comprehend. The elevation that's coming is not cosmetic. It's not temporary. It's transformational. It's the kind of shift that affects surnames. The kind that brings restoration to generations you've never met. The kind that makes your children thank you. Not just for what you gave them, but for what you walked away from. You are not just a light in your generation. You are a gatekeeper for the ones still to come. That closed door, that was God locking out everything that had no business touching your lineage. Everything that would have drained you before you could step into your divine office. Everything that whispered convenience when your calling requires consecration. So stand in that hallway with confidence. Don't curse the silence. Don't mourn the lock. Praise the one who closed it, because he knows what's behind the next one. And when it opens, when it finally swings wide, you'll look back and understand. You'll whisper, thank God that didn't work out. Because what's coming next, it's bigger than you. It's designed to elevate your entire bloodline. You may not see it yet. Chosen one. But that silence you've been sitting in, it's sacred. That pause, that delay, that stillness after the door closed. It wasn't abandonment, it was divine shielding. And I need you to really hear this. You weren't being punished. You were being protected. See, when God closes a door in your life, especially when you had your whole heart wrapped around it, it feels like being cast aside. It feels personal, like you did something wrong, or didn't have enough faith, or missed the mark. But in truth, it was because God saw what you couldn't see. He heard what you didn't hear. He knew what was being plotted in secret behind the scenes. And because of that, he stepped in not with a whisper, but with a slam, a shut, a divine no, not to hurt you, but to keep you safe. You don't know what was hiding in that opportunity that looked so perfect. You don't know the delay, the derailment, the spiritual attacks that would have intensified had you walked through that door. You thought you were being elevated, but God saw a trap. You thought you had found your blessing, but God saw it was laced with poison disguised as favor. And so he moved, swiftly, lovingly, unapologetically. That's what a true father does. And what's more, he didn't just protect you. He protected everything inside of you that's meant to live on long after you're gone. the legacy, the anointing, the generational healing, the blueprint that your bloodline has never seen before. Do you know how rare you are? How sacred? Do you understand the weight of being the first in your family to awaken spiritually, to see beyond the veil, to discern the times, to feel what others dismiss? That kind of awakening doesn't come without resistance. It doesn't come without trial. And it certainly doesn't come without divine protection. You've probably noticed it throughout your life. That certain things just didn't work out for you the way they did for others. That while others seemed to flow easily from one season to the next, your path was always different. Bumpier, quieter, slower, more isolated. But that's not because you were less than. It's because you were carrying more than more truth, more light, more impact, more spiritual inheritance. And when you're carrying that much, the root has to be refined. The journey has to be stripped of anything that could sabotage what God is building in you. And yes, that includes people, places, platforms, and especially plans that look good, but aren't God. Remember this: not every open door is divine, and not every closed door is a curse. Sometimes, the doors God closes are loud because He needed your attention. Because you were about to walk into something that looked right, but would have shattered your spirit from the inside out. Sometimes, it's not the enemy coming for your soul, it's your own desperation, tricking you into premature moves. And God had to interrupt that. Let me tell you a story. Think of Jonah, a man with a calling, yes, but also a man with a plan that didn't align with God's assignment. So what did God do? He sent a storm, a divine interruption. It wasn't to destroy Jonah, it was to realign him, to redirect him. Because Jonah wasn't just carrying a message for a city, he was carrying mercy for an entire people group. And had he continued on his own path, that message would have died on the waves. You, chosen one, are carrying something too precious to let perish in disobedience. That's why God stepped in. That's why He blocked it. That's why He shut it down when you were too close to see clearly. Because your calling can't afford compromise. Your legacy cannot be built on counterfeit foundations. So no, you weren't being punished. You were being preserved. He preserved your energy, your heart, your clarity. He preserved your voice from being drowned out in the noise of the wrong environment. He preserved your gift from being exploited by those who only saw your potential but never respected your process. And He preserved your lineage from repeating the patterns you were born to break. Let that settle in your spirit. You are not repeating cycles. You are breaking them. And every door that closed was part of that breaking. That relationship that ended, it was the last thread of a generational wound trying to keep you bound. That opportunity you lost, it would have positioned you under a system that was never meant to steward your calling. That friend who turned on you, they were never equipped to walk beside this level of elevation. And yes, it hurt. It still stings. The tears you cried over doors that slammed, they were real. But so is the glory coming next. You've been asking why God hasn't answered some prayers. But the truth is, He did. Just not in the way you expected. He answered them through absence, through silence, through removal. Because your prayers were asking for peace, for purpose, for legacy, and in order to give you those, He had to take something away. You asked for destiny, and He gave you pruning. You asked for elevation, and He gave you isolation. You asked for clarity, and He gave you a closed door. But let me remind you, the door closing wasn't a final answer. It was the start of a higher conversation between your soul and your Creator. And though the hallway has felt long, and the waiting has tested every part of your faith, you're still here, still breathing, still holding the vision. That's not by accident. You're being protected because you're chosen. You're being hidden because your light is that bright. You're being delayed because your timing is eternal, not earthly. So let the door close. Let it stay closed. Don't bang on it anymore. Don't try to pry it open. Don't let nostalgia convince you it was meant for you. If it was yours, it wouldn't have needed to be forced. If it was yours, it wouldn't have fractured your soul. If it was yours, God would have blessed it, not blocked it. There's power in surrender. There's power in trusting the closure. There's power in knowing that every no from heaven is protection, not rejection. And when the time comes, when the divine alignment finally arrives, you'll walk through a door so tailor-made for your spirit, you'll realize why every other one had to close. Because what's coming next will not only heal you, it'll elevate your entire bloodline. Now lean in a little closer. Chosen one, because what I'm about to say may shift the way you look at every closed door from now on. See? Your Father doesn't think in days or weeks or even decades. He thinks in generations. And while you've been looking at your pain through the lens of this present moment, God has been positioning your life like a seed being planted for an entire legacy yet to bloom. You may feel like what happened to you was unfair, untimely, even cruel. But in the divine realm, that closed door wasn't just about you, it was about what flows through you, about your bloodline, about the names that will be attached to yours long after you're gone. And whether you've seen it yet or not, everything you're going through is part of a larger blueprint, one that reaches far beyond your current understanding. You see, heaven is always playing the long game. The move you thought was small, the job you didn't get, the person you had to walk away from, the chapter you didn't get to finish was actually a shift in the trajectory of an entire lineage. God saw your future children. He saw their children. And He saw what would have been passed down if you had settled in that last season. So He intervened because He couldn't afford to let that spirit of lack continue. He couldn't allow the insecurity, the emotional manipulation, the confusion, the compromise to filter down into the generations tied to you. You were chosen to break that, and you're not just breaking it, you're replacing it. With clarity, with authority, with favor, with wholeness, with spiritual wisdom that multiplies as it moves down your line. You are not just chosen, you're the reset. You are the one God whispered over and said, "This one will carry what the others could not." That's why the warfare has been heavier on you. That's why the opposition has been relentless. Because the enemy isn't just afraid of you, he's terrified of what comes through you, of the children who'll never have to fight the battles you've faced, of the lineage that will walk in truth instead of trauma, of the family that will stand firm because you refuse to fold. You are the bridge, the breach in the dam, the intercessor between what was and what will be. And that's why your doors must be chosen carefully. It reminds me of Abraham. When God called him, He didn't just say, "You will be blessed." He said, "Through you, all nations will be blessed." That's a generational promise. That's legacy talk. That's the kind of covenant that doesn't end with your life. It echoes beyond it. But Abraham had to leave something behind first. He had to walk away from comfort, from familiarity, from everything that made sense. Just like you, and like Abraham. You too may not have all the answers. You may be walking by faith, unsure of where the next door is or when it'll open. But your obedience is unlocking something eternal, something that stretches beyond your name and into the lineage you were born to elevate. You carry royal blood in the spirit. And royalty doesn't just walk through any door. Royalty waits for gates to open. And when they do, they open wide, not just for the king or queen, but for the entire procession behind them. That's you, chosen one. You're the first, the pioneer, the blueprint. And because of that, you don't get to move the way others do. You don't get to say yes to what feels good but isn't God. You don't get to chase shiny things while carrying sacred things. And yes, it can feel lonely, misunderstood, like no one else gets what you're carrying. But that's okay, because you're not living for their applause. You're building for your descendants' freedom. Let that sink in. Your no today births their yes tomorrow. Your obedience creates opportunities they'll walk into without ever knowing the cost. Your healing from childhood wounds becomes their foundation of identity. Your decision to walk away from toxic cycles becomes their atmosphere of peace. You are rewriting your family story, and that's why God couldn't let you settle. That's why He shut the door. That's why He rerouted your steps. Because you're not building a moment, you're building a movement. And what's coming next will require the fullness of who you're becoming. So if it hasn't opened yet, trust that it's because what's on the other side is not just a blessing, it's a divine mantle. It's the kind of elevation that doesn't just lift you, it lifts your entire name, your entire house, the very sound of your legacy. And make no mistake, your bloodline will feel the shift. They may not always understand your decisions. They may question why you walked away from certain people, places, or systems. But one day, they'll know. They'll look around at the peace they've inherited, the clarity they carry, the spiritual wealth flowing through them, and they'll trace it back to you. They'll say, "Someone before me said yes when it was hard. Someone carried the weight so I wouldn't have to. Someone was willing to let go of what looked good so we could live in what's truly great." That someone is you. So walk boldly. Walk with reverence. Walk with eyes fixed, not on what you lost, but on what you're birthing. You are carrying the kind of promise that shifts atmospheres and rewrites legacies. And yes, it comes with cost. But it also comes with confirmation. Confirmation that what you felt all along, that deeper knowing, that higher calling, that invisible pull on your spirit, it wasn't a fantasy. It was real. And it's unfolding now. So let the doors close. Chosen one. Let the past be the past. Because what's coming next is a door wide enough to carry the dreams of generations. And when you step through it, you won't walk in alone. You'll walk in with every soul tied to your name, cheering in the spirit. Because you said yes. Because you kept going. Because you believed when it was hardest. And that belief, that faith, that legacy, it's already breaking chains. There's something else you need to understand. Chosen one, something that doesn't get talked about often enough. When God closes a door in your life, especially a door you thought would open into destiny, He's not just preserving you, He's also concealing you. Because not everything that is called is meant to be seen, not right away. Some blessings are born in secret. You may have felt invisible lately, overlooked, hidden in plain sight. And it stings, doesn't it? That sense that while others are being elevated, celebrated, or called forward, you're stuck behind some invisible wall. But I need you to hear me clearly. That wall was built by God. and not to keep you out, but to keep danger from finding its way in. The enemy has had eyes on you since birth. He saw your potential even before you did. That's why the warfare started early. That's why rejection came from places that were supposed to love you. That's why betrayal didn't wait for adulthood, it showed up in childhood. The enemy knew. He saw the light in you, the call on your name, and he tried to crush it before it could bloom, but he failed because you were marked by something stronger, something eternal, something divine. And no matter what he threw at you, you rose again and again, even when you didn't understand why, even when you didn't have language for your pain. Your spirit knew what your mind couldn't articulate. You were made for more. So when that door slammed recently, and I know it did, it wasn't just a closed opportunity. It was God pulling you back from visibility. Because visibility, without preparation, invites unnecessary warfare. It puts you on display before you've developed the discernment to handle what comes with the spotlight. Think of David. Before he ever wore the crown, he was hidden in the field, overlooked by his own father, uninvited to the anointing ceremony. But God saw him. God chose him. And more importantly, God kept him hidden until the appointed time. Because the anointing was never about visibility, it was about preparation. You're not being punished. Chosen one, you're being preserved and protected. Heaven knows the magnitude of your calling. It knows the generational ripple effect of your obedience. And that's why not every door gets to open when you want it to. Because some doors lead to exposure before you're equipped. Some doors open into rooms where your spirit isn't fully armored yet. And God loves you too much to allow that. You're still in the field. Yes, still in the wilderness. Still in the quiet places where your faith is being fortified. But don't mistake silence for absence. Heaven is still moving, still aligning, still writing. Your name is still in rooms your feet haven't entered yet. It's like a seed underground. Nothing seems to be happening. No fanfare, no recognition. But deep below the surface, roots are stretching, foundations are strengthening. And soon, very soon, breakthrough will burst forth. Not because you forced your way in, but because you were faithful in the hiding. There is power in concealment. There is anointing in anonymity. And just like a treasure is hidden to preserve its worth, so too have you been tucked away, not because you're unworthy, but because you're too worthy to be wasted. So when you feel forgotten, remember God hides his most powerful vessels before revealing them. And when that door slammed shut, that was God closing access to anything that would have mishandled your light. That was heaven saying, they're not ready for you yet. But they will be. See, some doors aren't closed because of what's behind them. They're closed because of what's in you. Because if the wrong people see it too soon, they'll try to shape it, control it, diminish it. And God is committed to protecting the purity of your calling. That's why you felt delayed. That's why it seems like others who don't even live right, who don't seek truth, who don't carry your heart, are prospering while you're waiting. It's not because you're behind. It's because your destiny is too weighty to be rushed. You don't carry a shallow anointing. Yours is deep. Yours is disruptive. Yours will shake the foundations of the rooms you enter. So yes, God's kept you hidden. But that doesn't mean forgotten. Just ask Moses. He was hidden in a basket, floating down the Nile, an infant marked for death. Pharaoh tried to kill every Hebrew baby boy to stop what heaven had already started. But God concealed him. Not only that he placed him right in the enemy's palace and still kept him safe, you don't think God is capable of doing the same for you. He'll hide you in plain sight. He'll protect your spirit while the world misunderstands your silence. He'll close doors to preserve your purpose and use the very thing that was meant to kill you as the thing that matures you, because the enemy can't touch what he can't trace. And your anointing, it's untraceable, undeniable, unstoppable. So stop mourning the rooms you weren't invited into. Stop replaying the chapters that ended too soon. Stop trying to resurrect what God already buried. That closed door is your covering. That delay is your shield. That rejection is your redirection. And while others are busy performing for approval, you're becoming who you were born to be. Quietly, secretly, powerfully. And when the time is right, when you've been fortified, tested, and proven, he will open a door that no man can shut. And when you step through it, the glory will not just be yours. It'll be generational. Because when God elevates you, he elevates everything connected to your name. And chosen one, believe me, when I say this, your bloodline will never be the same again. There's a sacred law written into the journey of every chosen one before elevation. There must be isolation. It's not optional. It's not punishment. It's preparation. Because before you can carry the weight of a divine calling, you have to be stripped of everything false, every voice that distracts, every mask you didn't realize you were wearing, every attachment that doesn't serve your purpose. Isolation isn't loneliness, it's refinement. You've felt it, haven't you? That ache of being cut off. Friends fall away. Conversations become shallow. Places that once felt like home now feel unfamiliar. It's not because you've changed for the worse. It's because your frequency has shifted. You're no longer resonating with what once held you. That's divine. It's supposed to happen. Elevation demands separation. Not because God wants you to suffer, but because he wants you to stand. And you cannot stand in power if you're still leaning on people who are only meant to walk beside you for a season. So he begins to prune, gently, but intentionally. And yes, it hurts. That silence can feel deafening. That empty space, once filled with laughter or busyness, now echoes with questions. But hear me in the silence. He speaks in the stillness. He strengthens in the solitude. He sanctifies. He's been pulling you inward because the next season requires a voice that is not swayed by the opinions of others. It requires clarity that doesn't come from crowds. It requires a kind of rootedness that only isolation can create. And he's done this before. Look at Jesus. Before he launched into public ministry, before the miracles, before the multitudes, he was led into the wilderness. 40 days. Alone, hungry, tempted. But that wilderness wasn't a delay. It was a forge. It was where his spirit was sharpened, where his authority was tested, where he learned to overcome not just with power, but with identity. And that's exactly what God is doing in you. He's revealing who you are without the noise, without the accolades, without the distractions. Because if you don't know who you are in the stillness, you'll forget who you are in the spotlight. So he pulls you away. From the friend who drained you with their chaos, from the relationship that made you question your worth, from the job that paid well but poisoned your peace, from the people who tolerated your presence but never honored your soul, and you're left wondering, why is everyone leaving? Why does it feel like the more I grow, the more I lose? Because, chosen one, when you elevate in the spirit, Everything not rooted in truth starts to fall off. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're finally doing something right. Your boundaries are no longer optional. Your discernment is sharpening. Your heart is no longer open to anything that costs you your peace. And that means the old won't survive in your new atmosphere. God is preparing you to lead, to pioneer, to heal. And that kind of purpose cannot be carried in clutter. It needs clarity. It needs space. It needs separation. Isolation is where you learn to hear His voice without filters. It's where you learn to sit in discomfort and realize you are still whole. It's where you realize that even if every door stays closed, if God is with you, you lack nothing. It's hard, I know. Being the strong one, the different one, the one who sees beyond the surface while everyone else is content playing pretend. But you weren't called to fit in. You were called to transform. And transformers don't follow crowds, they shift atmospheres. So if you've been wondering why you feel so misunderstood, this is why. If you've been asking why God allowed the disconnection, this is why. If you've felt unseen, unheard, or forgotten, this is why. Because you're not being punished. You're being positioned. He's stripping away what cannot follow you into the next dimension of your calling. And the loneliness you feel now, it's making space for something holy, something weighty, something eternal. You will not be this hidden forever. You will not be this quiet forever. But when you return from this season, this sacred cocoon, you will return with power, with precision, with a clarity that rattles the atmosphere. Because you will know who you are, and nothing will shake you. Think of a butterfly. Before it can fly, it must enter the chrysalis, a space of complete solitude. No audience, no affirmation, just transformation. And in that darkness, what was once a crawling creature becomes a thing of beauty and flight. You are in your chrysalis season. You are becoming. And the very isolation you once feared is the space where heaven is building your wings. So don't resent the quiet. Don't rush the process. Don't try to fill the space with noise just because it's uncomfortable. Stay still. Stay soft. Stay open. Because the next door won't just open for the version of you that was. It's waiting for the version of you that's emerging. The elevated you. The aligned you. The anointed you. And when that moment comes, and it will, you won't have to beg for the door to open. It will open because it was assigned to you, designed for your frequency, timed to your transformation. And behind that door, everything changes. For you, for your children, for your children's children. Because isolation wasn't punishment. It was the birthplace of a legacy. There's a moment that comes for every chosen one when the stillness becomes unbearable. When the hallway feels too long. When the silence after the closed door starts to sound like rejection rather than revelation. But what if I told you, chosen one, that this in-between space, this stretch of time where nothing seems to move, is not a void, it's a voice. It's heaven speaking in whispers, only your spirit can hear. Closed doors birth clarity. They strip away the noise. They remove the options that weren't meant for you. They push you into alignment by denying you the luxury of distraction. And in that sacred narrowing of your path, your vision sharpens. You stop asking God to bless your plans, and you start asking Him to reveal His. You start to see with new eyes, because that door that slammed in your face, it made you question everything. It forced you to pause, to look deeper, to dig into your soul and ask, was I building what God called me to build, or just chasing what I thought I wanted? Clarity doesn't always come through confirmation. Sometimes it comes through collapse, and in that collapse, In that moment where the foundation cracked beneath your feet, your roots went deeper. You were forced to anchor in truth, not feelings, in purpose, not popularity, in God's voice, not people's opinions. You learned to listen again, and in that listening, your discernment awakened. You began to notice what no longer fit. You realized that certain people, environments, and habits weren't just holding you back, that they were contaminating your vision. You saw that what felt familiar wasn't always safe, that what looked like a blessing could actually be a beautifully wrapped detour. And so, the door closed, and with it, God closed access to confusion. He's not cruel. Chosen one. He's clear. And he's committed to your clarity, even if it means disappointing your expectations. It's just like when Saul fell on the road to Damascus. One moment, power. The next, blindness. But that blindness wasn't punishment. It was pause. It was God's divine hand interrupting Saul's momentum so he could redirect his mission. And from that pause came Paul the Apostle, who would write the foundations of the New Testament. But it started with the fall, with the stop, with the closed door. You may feel blinded by what just ended. You may feel like you're walking in darkness, unsure of what comes next. But that space, that pause, that's where new sight is born. Not through the eyes of your flesh, but through the eyes of your spirit. And in that stillness, you realize what you thought was loss was actually liberation. You've been freed from needing validation to feel valuable, freed from settling in spaces that never saw you, freed from bending to the will of people who couldn't carry your heart. And in that freedom, your real calling begins to rise. You see, clarity is costly. It will cost you illusions. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you every counterfeit that once gave you a false sense of purpose. But in return, you'll gain vision. Unshakable, divine vision. The kind that doesn't fade in storms. The kind that sees through what others get stuck in. And that vision is what prepares you for what's next. Because what's coming isn't a repeat of your past. It's a reinvention. A reintroduction. A resurrection of everything you thought you lost, reborn with power and precision. But God had to remove the options that would have diluted your obedience. He had to close the door on distractions dressed as destiny. He had to narrow your path so you'd finally see him again. And now, chosen one, you're seeing clearly. The disappointment you've realized, it wasn't about rejection, it was about redirection. That betrayal, you now see it was a divine release. That delay you've come to understand, it was a sacred pause for preparation. And with each layer that's been peeled back, your identity has become clearer. You're no longer asking for tables to sit at, you're preparing to build your own. You're not begging for inclusion, you're anchoring in divine instruction. Because the clarity born in the silence has shown you what really matters. Purpose over position, calling over clout, obedience over outcome. And that's when you know you're ready. That's when the door begins to creak open. Not because you pushed, but because your presence now matches the weight of the assignment behind it. The old you couldn't have handled what's on the other side. But this you, the one forged in fire and quiet, you're ready, you're aligned. And God doesn't just open doors for the aligned. He builds them. Tailored, timed, timeless. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep discerning. Because every moment you spend in clarity is a moment the enemy loses ground. He thrives in confusion. He feeds on indecision. But you've been sharpened by silence. You've been tuned to heaven's frequency. You now move with intentionality, not desperation. And what's coming next will require all of it. Every lesson, every scar, every whispered prayer in the dark. Because now, you don't just hope for open doors. You know the one who opens them. You don't fear delay. You understand divine timing. You're not moved by applause. You're rooted in purpose. And soon, the door that opens will not just be for you. It will be a gate that leads your entire bloodline into the land they've never known. Freedom, purpose, legacy, but none of it would have been possible without the clarity born in the dark. That's the power of the pause. That's the gift of the closed door. If you've made it this far, chosen one, then you're already feeling the shift in your spirit. The old definitions no longer fit. The old dreams feel too small. The old labels people placed on you misunderstood. Too intense, too sensitive. Too much they've all fallen off. And you're beginning to realize you were never too much. You were just called for more. But here's what most don't understand about this journey. Divine timing often looks like delay. And holy elevation often starts with earthly demotion. The door closes. The plans collapse. The people walk away. And for a season, it seems like everything is moving in reverse. But what you're experiencing isn't rejection, it's realignment. Because divine setups often begin with unexpected endings. Think of Joseph. One moment, he was favored, adorned in a coat of many colors, dreaming of greatness. The next, he was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. Every door that opened for Joseph seemed to close with betrayal. And yet, every step was a setup. Every delay had a direction. And the pit wasn't the end, it was the passage. Because Joseph wasn't just destined to rise. He was destined to preserve an entire nation. His elevation wasn't for comfort, it was for impact. His platform wasn't about recognition, it was about redemption. And God couldn't let Joseph walk into that level of power without first purifying his heart, stretching his vision, and humbling his pride. That's what your delays are doing now. They're not setbacks. They're sacred recalibrations. They're heaven whispering, "Wait, I'm not done preparing you." See, the next door that opens in your life isn't just any door. It's the door. The one that doesn't just lead to opportunity, it leads to ordination. It's the door that matches your assignment. The door that won't require compromise. The door that, once it opens, will never be able to close again. Because what God ordains, man can't overturn. And when that door opens, chosen one, it's not just going to bless you. It's going to bless everything attached to you, your family, your bloodline, the ones who came before and the ones who will come after. Because God never just thinks about the now. He sees the ripple effect of your yes. He sees the legacy of your obedience. He sees how your courage to say no to lesser things creates space for generational blessings to take root. So don't curse the delay. Don't rush the process. Don't measure your journey by the timelines of those who were never called to carry what you carry. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time for the rhythm of your own divine unfolding. And soon, what looked like delay will be revealed as strategy. You'll see how the rejection made room for the real, how the silence taught you to listen, how the isolation forged your inner authority, and how the door that stayed shut saved your destiny. Because the thing about divine elevation is, it comes quietly. It comes when the crowd is gone. It comes when you finally surrendered the need to be seen and instead become someone who can see deeply, spiritually, truthfully. And that kind of elevation doesn't just happen to you, it happens through you. It rewrites your story. It awakens gifts you didn't know were buried inside. It causes you to walk differently, speak differently, love differently. Because when God elevates you, He's not just giving you favor, He's giving you function. He's giving you authority to shift atmospheres, to break chains, to walk into spaces and change them simply by being fully yourself. No more shrinking. No more apologizing for your sensitivity, your depth, your dreams. No more hiding behind humility that was actually fear in disguise. You are being elevated not just to rise, but to reign. And not for your own glory, but for the fulfillment of a promise spoken over your family generations ago. A promise that may have felt lost, but has been preserved through you. You are the one they prayed for. You are the answer to the cries of those who came before. And now, you're becoming the blueprint for those who'll follow. So walk with confidence, even in the delay. Speak with authority, even in the silence. Stand with assurance, even when the door hasn't opened yet, because it will. And when it does, it won't just lead you into destiny, it will unlock doors for every soul tied to your obedience. This is bigger than you. Chosen one. It always has been. And when that elevation comes, and it's coming, don't be surprised when the same people who questioned your process start asking for your wisdom. Don't be shocked when the very ones who dismissed you begin looking to you for direction. Because the glory of God is going to rest on you so tangibly. It'll be undeniable, not because you forced it, not because you performed for it, but because you were faithful. And faithfulness is the soil where elevation grows. So get ready. Your delay was a setup. Your isolation was instruction. Your pain was preparation. And your next door, it won't just change your life. It'll elevate your entire bloodline. By now, something inside you has shifted. That ache in your soul has found words. That quiet knowing in your spirit has been confirmed. You are not broken. You're not forgotten. You're not being punished. You, chosen one, have simply been prepared. Every closed door, every delayed promise, every lonely season, it was part of a divine construction project you couldn't yet see. But now, the veil is lifting. The blueprint is being revealed. And you're beginning to realize the door that closed wasn't the end, and it was the beginning of a legacy your ancestors could only dream about. You were chosen to end cycles, to tear down strongholds, to break generational chains that lived in your bloodline for far too long. And not only that, you were chosen to build something new, something that carries the fragrance of heaven, something clean, something unshakable. You're no longer just healing for you. You're healing for everyone who comes after you. For every daughter who will rise with confidence because you taught her how. For every son who will know his worth because you stood for truth. For every child who will walk in peace because you refused to normalize chaos. You're building a bloodline that walks in power, not pain. And yes, it cost you. The late nights, the tears, the prayers you cried alone, the dreams you buried because no one believed in them but you and God. The relationships you had to let go of, even when it tore your heart in half. But here's the thing, none of it was wasted. None of it was unseen. Heaven watched you choose faith over fear again and again. Heaven saw you keep your heart soft even when people tried to harden it. Heaven heard you say, "Not my will, but yours," even when you didn't understand. And now, heaven is about to respond. There's a moment coming when everything will begin to align. Not because you manipulated it, not because you hustled or pushed or begged, but because you became the vessel heaven could trust. You became the voice the next generation needed. You became the person your past self was praying for. And now, the elevation is inevitable. Because the thing about divine assignments is they always come with divine timing. And your time, chosen one, is here. What's coming next will not be a trickle of blessing. It'll be a flood, not a whisper of favor, but a wave of it. Not just breakthrough, but legacy-shifting momentum. And it'll happen not only in your life, but in the lives connected to you. Your family will rise. Your household will stabilize. Your bloodline will be known not for brokenness, but for blessing. Not for bondage, but for boldness. Not for pain, but for purpose. Because when God elevates a chosen one, it is never just personal, it's generational. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep honoring the door that closed. Knowing it was never meant to be a cage, it was a corridor. It was the hallway to something holy. And now, you stand on the threshold of everything you were born to become. And when the new door opens, and it will, you'll look back with tears in your eyes and strength in your spine. And you'll say, that closed door was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because what's coming next will elevate your entire bloodline. Breathe, chosen one. Slow it all down now. Let this truth settle into your bones. You are exactly where you're meant to be. Not behind, not lost, not broken. Just in the middle of a masterpiece still being painted. And the strokes may look messy up close. But from heaven's vantage point, they are forming something glorious, something eternal. You are not late. You are right on time for your calling. You are not cursed. You are deeply covered. You are not forgotten. You are forever marked by the Most High. So lift your head. Square your shoulders. This path was never meant to be walked by the masses. It was carved for the remnant, for the rare ones, for the anointed, for you. You don't need everyone to understand your process. Just trust the one who authored it. You don't need constant confirmation from people. Heaven has already said yes, and you don't need to force the next door open. What is yours will find you. It will recognize you. It will open. Not by your striving, but by your surrender. Now breathe again. And when the next door opens and the light hits your face in a way it never has before, don't rush. Walk through it slowly, knowing you are walking not only for yourself, but for those who never had the strength to reach the door. You are the answered prayer. You are the legacy. You are the shift. Now go, walk in it. And if this message spoke to your soul, like it was written just for you because it was, share it, comment, subscribe, stay connected. Your journey is sacred. And your next chapter, it's holy. God bless you.